There is so much hype around peptides. It's insane. I have so many friends that are doing it. They're talking about how awesome it is. But there's a big part of this where I think there's a lot of concern. And this is why it's so important today, this conversation we're going to be having, because if you're looking into hormone replacements, if you're looking into peptides, I'm going to tell you why Game Day really is the only place that you can go. Mark's here with me, and we've talked a good bit about this, and some of the numbers on this are staggering. I just seen this, and this is with the hormone replacement therapy, but it will let you know how it has grown. It says there were nearly 12 million prescriptions in 2025 compared to fewer than 1 million in the year 2000.
Yeah.
Usage has jumped 154% since the pandemic alone. It's absolutely insane. Now, I've been doing the hormone stuff since I was about 35. 17 years ago was when I got involved with it. And I started with somebody that I think was a podiatrist that was giving me.
A podiatrist?
Yes.
Really?
Yeah. He did feet, I think.
Yeah. That would be a podiatrist. Wow.
Yeah. And I've seen that. And we've talked about that with Game Day. And that's, to me, one of the big selling points is the fact that when you go to Game Day, you're not dealing with podiatrists. You're not dealing with
chiropractors.
No
offense to chiropractors, but
yeah, but they know what they know,
right?
And look, I mean, the more I know about hormones, peptides, things like this is such a specialized thing that you really have to have board certified clinicians that are doing it. And that's what you get at Game Day.
Yeah,
and
for sure.
We were talking about the peptides, and it's insane that I got hit up in the lobby of my church with a guy who's like, dude, I have him in my trunk. Like, you can have him today. And then you're going to take this liquid home that you bought out of someone's trunk, and you're going to inject it into your body.
Right.
It's complete madness. So today, we can acknowledge the popularity of hormone replacement therapy and peptides and what people are doing with them. But we're going to tell you why it's so important that you're going with somebody like Game Day Men's Health. You can't just be injecting this kind of stuff in you. We're going to let you know how effective it is, but also how you can really jack yourself up. Now, for people that don't know and are not in on the lingo, peptides are what? Just short chains of amino acids that signal molecules in the body. Explain exactly what the peptides are doing.
Yeah, essentially, it's a category of a type of hormone. And so hormones are chemical signalers that will bind to a certain receptor site within a cell or in a tissue, and then it will create a certain response, whether it be increasing the activity of a particular cell, like increasing cellular turnover. In other words, the rate that new cells are produced and formed. Various things. GLP-1s, for example, that's actually a peptide.
It is.
Semaglutide, tirzepatide, those are actually peptides. It's just a category of a hormone.
Okay.
Yeah.
And it just makes your body do different things.
Correct.
It's turning on switches.
Exactly. Yeah, it's exactly what it is. Binds to, it can activate or it can turn off. But either way, it's binding to a receptor site that then, elicits a certain response.
Now, I want to go right in on this right now because I know when I had first started that stuff, somebody had likened it to this, that sometimes there are certain things, and I think this was human growth hormone they were talking about, HGH. I don't know if that's a peptide or what category that goes
itself,
into.
Well, we use the HGH peptides. So these are peptides that bind to either the hypothalamus or the pituitary gland, which are the glands that then release certain hormones.
Okay.
So they facilitate the amplified output of human growth hormone rather than injecting human growth hormone exogenously on its own.
What somebody had put to me was they said that with some of these things, it turns on cells, and that could be cancer cells. Tell me about that fear right away. Yeah. What is the legitimacy of that, and how do you know that you're not doing that when you're doing peptides or any of this kind of stuff?
Yeah. Well, that's where it can get a little bit tricky because it's not going to necessarily activate a cancerous cell if the cell doesn't exist. In fact, it can actually prevent against that because it improves the cellular function, which can also, part of that could also be preventing a cancerous cell from forming in the first place. So if you don't have cancer, in many cases, many of them are actually protective against that.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Oh,
and there's a lot of growing research that is showing that clearly. But if you have an active malignancy, but let's say you didn't know about it, then it could potentially propagate it because it can improve the function of any cell, including ones that are less than ideal, like a cancer cell.
Now, the reason why people are going crazy about the peptides and what I'm hearing, here's just a small list of what people are saying you can get: muscle growth, fat loss, anti-aging, injury recovery, better sleep, improved skin. Peptides, these short chains of amino acids, helping you with all that kind of stuff.
Correct.
Does that sound about right? That's all legitimate stuff that people are looking for. Most of the guys I'm talking to are guys in their 40s to 50s, and they want to hold on to the body they had in their 20s and 30s. They want to still have muscle, and they want to be shredded. And I was just talking to a buddy of mine this week, and he's like, dude, these peptides, my trainer was saying, I haven't done anything different. Diet's not any different. Workout's not different. I'm shredded. And he said the peptides is the only difference. Yeah,
for sure. They can definitely, if you have a sticking point, they can definitely help with breaking through that. All of those things, the peptides have the potential. There's some that kind of capture that entire umbrella. So everything you just said, you can find in one particular. So like a lot of the HGH peptides, because we know that that's what human growth hormone itself does. And so, but the benefit to using a peptide to amplify your own natural production of HGH is when you take human growth hormone exogenously, one, you can suppress your own natural production.
Okay.
So there's what's called a negative feedback loop. So if your body recognizes that you have a ton of, and this happens also with testosterone, it doesn't need to.
I can quit.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, because the body is always trying to maintain what's called homeostasis, or like the neutral
balance
state, a balanced state. Exactly. Yeah. And so when you deviate beyond that, then the body's going to try to, bring you back within the normal range, because it's not typically ideal to go outside of the normal balance.
Now, I know when I go to game day, and the reason why I love going to game day to do my hormone replacement therapy is you guys are checking my levels.
Mm-hmm.
Can you do the same kind of thing with peptides to make sure that you've got somebody balanced and it's doing the right things in the body?
Depending on the peptide, but for the most part, the kind of the nice thing about the peptides is it's not entirely necessary. It's not going to throw. Testosterone needs to be monitored a little bit more closely, because there are certain other hormones or lab values that can get slightly altered if you deviate too far beyond.
Right.
But the other thing is with testosterone, typically when you're taking testosterone replacement therapy, you're staying on that indefinitely. It's because your body is not producing adequate amounts.
Right.
In order to get that benefit, you have to stay on it. The peptides you cycle. So you never really, in an ideal setting, if done properly, you don't stay on them. It's not intended to stay on permanently like testosterone. So you cycle off of it. And the nice part about it is basically what they're doing is they're amplifying your body's own natural production. When you get off, everything just goes back to normal. So
when you go into game day and you want to get the peptides, and this is the thing, I had somebody come to me and like, you need to do this stack. And it had all these things and this is the thing that's confusing to me is some of these peptides, it's like 3 letters and then 3 numbers. And it just all sounds like I can't even put it all together. And when you do a stack, when you go to game day, you guys are going to look at a lot of different stuff. Now, this guy just looked at me and said, dude, I know your age and here's what you need to take. It's perfect. And, the guy does construction. And so I'm like, I don't know if this is a guy that tells me exactly what my body needs. So
Probably
what
not.
are you going to look like at game day, and how much does that vary? Because you even knew the name of the stack when I brought it to you. Was it the Hercules
the
stack?
Wolverine,
Okay, something silly like that.
Yeah, which has been around now for a little while. So the important thing is that we're taking an extensive medical history, because even the Wolverine stack, as benign as it might sound, that is one of those particular stacks that if you have a history of cancer, or even if you don't, but if you have an extensive family history, mom and dad have had something, or certainly if you have something active at the moment, that would not be one that I would recommend, because that particular stack can increase blood flow to a particular malignancy or a mass, and it can also increase the rate in which the cells propagate. So and that's where, speaking with a clinician would be important. Or, there's some evidence that would suggest that they could, that particular stack could cause coagulopathy or excessive clotting, which could lead to a blood clot.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
And so fine if you don't have any kind of a history, but if you have a clotting disorder, again, I would steer you away from that. Yeah. But this guy who you're speaking of, he doesn't know anything about your history.
No.
He's just saying, hey, this worked well for me. And so it's all anecdotal and potentially dangerous.
Yeah, and I think that's the one thing about this. First of all, there's a couple problems. One, it could be dangerous, which that should be enough to stop you in your tracks and make sure you're doing it right. But the other part, too, is being effective and doing exactly what you want. Because I named off several qualities here, whether it be muscle growth or leaning out, or you want better sleep or whatever it might be. And I assume you have to put different things together in peptides to make the perfect concoction for Kevin. It's almost like I shouldn't be on a Wolverine stack. I should be on the Kevin stack which everything
Yes.
is designed just for me.
Exactly.
And when you go to game day, that's what you get,
Right.
as opposed to buying out of somebody's trunk.
Yeah, we're going to look at the whole clinical picture, and you might have one particular thing that's plaguing you, like poor sleep, but maybe there's something else that's causing that, and so we're going to try and address that maybe in a different way. Maybe the answer isn't a peptide, maybe it's something else, maybe it's a supplement, maybe it's just lifestyle habits. So we're going to kind of look at the whole picture, and then make a custom take a custom approach.
Mm-hmm. Now, the one thing that I'd seen, and another risk of this, because I know people may be like, well, I'm not buying it through a trunk, I'm buying it online.
Yeah.
First of all, how do you know that just because somebody has a good-looking website that they are a legitimate company and they truly know what they're doing and that they actually have board-certified clinicians?
Yeah, you don't, unfortunately, and a lot of these online companies are using research labs instead of actual FDA-compliant pharmacies, and so that's another big separator for.
Yeah, it says here that a lot of these peptides rely on animal studies or limited research, meaning their effectiveness, safe dosing, and long-term risk in humans remain largely unknown.
Yeah, and that is correct for many of them. Now, the saving grace is the fact that, again, a lot of these peptides are naturally occurring. Some of them were sort of stumbled upon during experiments when a research scientist was looking for maybe something that they could convert to a pharmaceutical medication, and then they come across this and they go, oh, hey, this might have potential. Maybe we need to pursue looking into this further. And so then the experiments or the research progresses to like animal trials and stuff. But ultimately, if you want to get something FDA approved, a pharmaceutical company has to buy into it and spend millions of dollars going through multiple clinical trials in order to get it to that point where it can then be brought to the market as a pharmaceutical FDA approved medication. And so several of the peptides have not gotten there, and some of them might not, and that's why they refer to them as experimental or research, because they're still kind of within that realm. They have not become FDA approved. That being said, there are also several that were FDA approved many years ago for certain purposes. Like sermorelin's a very popular one that was FDA approved many years ago for kids with short stature. Mm-hmm. They're just not growing appropriately or at the ideal rate. And so you can, they would administer that to help with the short stature, but yeah. So I mean, that would be an example, and there's several others, but yeah, several of the peptides are not, we are mostly looking at research based evidence. It's still in the early phases.
Yeah, this article says that some are legit FDA approved that you get online, but many that are sold online, they said that's not even approved for human use and are often marked as research chemicals. And people are buying that online. I don't know how, and they're getting it and they're injecting it themselves into their bodies.
Yeah. They're available at compounding pharmacies, and so that's where we are able to get them. And but we have to stay up to speed with the latest evidence on each of these. But if you're getting them from a research lab, then they're not. It's not a pharmacy. It's not FDA compliant, and so you don't know. Is this even the concentration that would be needed to to actually see any kind of a response? Is it contaminated?
Imagine that. Yeah, it's almost like you'd be putting poison in your body.
You could potentially. Yeah, you absolutely could. In fact, there was a video I saw recently where one of the most popular, I'm not going to drop any names, one of those popular research lab companies that offers these products was featured, and this was considered a legitimate one. And if you go like on, say, Reddit or places like that, they'll talk, speak very positively about this particular research lab. And when they showed the video of the individual who runs the lab, he's basically just mixing stuff in like a bathtub.
That's wild. And people are getting that in the mail and then injecting it into their body.
Yeah. And then the other issue becomes, is it, even if it is the actual concentration of the peptide, is it contaminated? And so there was another YouTuber who had several of the most popular research labs, their vials tested, and it was riddled with heavy metals.
Whoa.
Yeah.
So
never know.
We've established why you need to go to Game Day Men's Health to get the peptides. But let's talk about what you've seen in success and how effective it is, because the word of mouth that I'm getting, it seems to be so hyped. Like I said, my friend And he was showing me the before and after photos. I mean, it looked legit, shredded him up.
Sure.
And his muscles are just more dense. They're not puffy. He's like, dude, I look good. He's my age. And I was like, yeah, you do. And I've seen a big change in him. He claims it's all peptides. A claim like that, are we talking, is this legitimate? Are you seeing it? Is it worthy of the hype that Peptides is getting right now? Do they change a body or give you the results that you want that effectively?
They can definitely... They definitely have potential. This particular guy, I don't know. I'd have to see him.
Yes.
You know, if you're expecting to turn into, you know, a bodybuilder overnight, then I mean, no, that would not likely be realistic. But yeah, as far as composition change, building muscle, absolutely. I mean, there's some. I've been using them myself, you know, on and off for years with incredible results. I actually started using them about 6-7 years ago, mainly for injuries, because I have a couple of shoulder injuries. I've had a bad back injury.
Okay.
And usually if I'm unable to rehab it on my own is when I would then, you know, start using a peptide. And normally within like a month or so, it's just gone.
Now, I would like to use it for the weight loss and just get tighter that way, but I'm not interested. You said that you look at the GLP-1s; those are peptides.
That is a peptide.
I'm not interested in cutting back on what I eat, and I don't want those kind of effects. Can you still shred up without having to cut back on your diet or anything else you're doing in your lifestyle?
Yeah, there are others like the HGH peptides. HGH we know can it helps with protein synthesis, so building muscle. It activates adipose tissue, so it makes better utilization of stored fat. And so, yeah, you can absolutely see pretty incredible results with peptides as far as changing body composition and, you know, building a more, you know, lean athletic build.
Okay, so if you're looking for anything that we discuss, they would just come in, do a consultation. You guys will sit down, talk to them about what their desires are, what they want to do. What else is a consultation going to look like if you're going to game day for Peptides?
So, yeah, again, we would discuss kind of, you know, take an initial history, discuss kind of what their primary reason for being there is. So, you know, my average patient comes in because they are feeling tired, less energetic during the day, less motivation. You know, they feel like they're still exercising, or the ones that are exercising, they're exercising, but they're kind of at a standstill. They're not seeing the same results, or even kind of a decline despite still training hard or eating properly. You know, maybe they're not sleeping well. And so they're going to come in with a list of issues that's going on. And then from there, right at that point, now I'm starting to think, okay, well, based on this list, what could it possibly be? What are some of the options? And, you know, and in my head, I'm making a list of like 5 to 10 different pathways that we can go with this. And then we get them back of the medical history. With the medical history, you know, let's say, okay, they have a history of cancer. Maybe now, now that's going to cross out a couple of peptides, or you know, they had recent prostate cancer or something. Now testosterone might not be an option.
So when you talk about sitting down for the peptides, hormone replacement therapy would be a part of this discussion. And how do you know when hormone replacement therapy won't cover everything they want to do, so we have to bring in the peptides for that?
Well, oftentimes for my typical patient, a lot of times it does satisfy most things.
The hormone replacement,
is
all you need.
Yeah. The peptide is a hormone, so I mean, you could almost. It's not entirely like, I guess you could consider it sort of hormone replacement. It's still filling up the tank, similar to how testosterone
giving you what you would have naturally if you want to be effective.
Correct. Yeah. Because in a similar fashion, human growth hormone declines after, you know, with age pretty sharply after age 25, and so with that is when we can start to see side effects from low growth hormone. And so taking a growth hormone peptide helps to bring you back into the upper level of normal or ideal. And with that, you see, you know, symptomatic relief. Yeah. So, but yeah, testosterone is always going to be, I mean, that's what we specialize in addition to the peptides. So a lot of times that's, you know, primary. And then, but if say someone's not a candidate for testosterone, now we have to look at other, because they still have the same issues, but maybe they're not, for whatever reason, a candidate for testosterone. And so now we have to look at other options for them, whether that be, you know, supplement or dietary advice or.
And you can get all this by coming into game day, which is all the stuff that you're not going to get from somebody that you've met at a gym or at a church or whatever. Yeah. These are the kind of things, this is the added care that you get. You're going to have the peace of mind. You know, you're going to get something that's going to be effective. And you're going to have other things, too, that you guys can introduce that somebody who's just selling peptides out of their trunk is not going to be able to offer.
Yeah, absolutely. You have, you know, someone who's a certified, you know, board-certified clinician whose expertise is in this field. And so, and you also, if, let's say you have some kind of a reaction, most people don't really have the reactions to peptides are usually pretty minuscule and often transient or even like alleviated shortly after you've if you were to discontinue the medication. But let's just say you had some kind of a weird reaction. Now at least you have someone that you can also call, you can reach out to. Hey, I'm experiencing this. What do I do? Okay, is it something that requires you stopping completely? Is it something mild? And then you just kind of explain it through and give them peace of mind. And so you'll always have that as well. You have someone that you can turn to. The other big thing is there's a particular way if you receive the peptide, if it comes lyophilized, which is in a powder form, and you have to mix it, which oftentimes these research grade labs, that's how you're receiving the peptide. It's not already mixed in a liquid that you can just draw up. You have to mix it itself. They can't really guide you on how to do that.
That's
and
crazy.
There's a particular way to do that.
Yes.
If you mess it up, you can actually compromise the entire peptide itself.
Wow.
And render it basically useless if you don't store it properly. If you're not drawing it up properly and practicing sterile procedure when you're injecting it, you can infect yourself. So yeah, you need a clinician to do all this and help guide you through all of this.
All I'm seeing is the hype. I'm hearing people that are having great results from it, but there's just so much that people don't know. And I just think it's wild that you would ever inject something into your body without fully knowing what it is, talking to somebody that you would trust, somebody that has gone to school to do this kind of stuff and is a true expert in the field.
For sure.
And that's why I wanted to bring you in here today to talk about this. If you go to GameDayMen'sHealth.com, they can get you in there for the consultation. Always make sure you mention my name, Kevin from the KVJ Show, because we're running special deals all the time. You'll be saving money. You'll get something special by doing it. And they can get you in there and get you on the right path for all these things. Don't be buying it out of trunks. Don't be buying it at gyms. Go to GameDayMen'sHealth.com. Mark, thanks for coming in and talking about it.
Thank you.